Well, welcome to my home, everyone. I'm assuming you might be at home too. This is the home that God has blessed us with, where we raise our three beautiful, amazing children, and where we create some forever memories. But this is also the home that welcomed us about 10 years ago when my firstborn, Ezra Stone, was just 6 months old. In fact, Ezra was just starting to crawl, and he was the absolute cutest kid in the world. Now, I know that Chitwood has Cruz and he thinks he's the cutest, but my kid's the cutest. That's just what it's going to have to be. But here's the thing. I was the kind of dad that loved to be seen with his baby in public. Yeah, partly to show the world that dads can do it too, but also because Ezra was my absolute pride and joy. If you haven't gathered by now, I absolutely love children. And as you can imagine, that tends to spill its way into this beautiful ministry that we get to do together. But I want to tell you one quick story. On one Saturday morning, I took Ezra out with me for some coffee, and I chatted up the barista, as I like to do. As you might have noticed, I like to talk. And I told him not to worry about putting the lid on my coffee because I just had to take it over to the other bar to put the cream and the sugar into it. But before I knew it, the coffee was on the way to the ground, and the coffee was coming out of the cup. And you might be thinking, yeah, the coffee was spilling into Ezra's car seat. And so I raced to strip Ezra down, to put him in the sink, to rinse him off, to bring down the temperature on his skin because the coffee was so hot. And I put him back in his car seat, and I rushed him to the car so that I could get him to the hospital, but the car wouldn't start. And so I ran back into the coffee shop. I grabbed the keys from the manager of the shop, who happened to be a friend, and I put Ezra in the back of his car. And parents out there, you know what this is like. If you're in another person's car, they don't always have a car seat base. And so with one hand, I held on to the car seat, and with the other, I ran every red light on the way to the hospital. And person after person came in to see me at the hospital, as you would imagine, and they all had one question for me. So tell us what happened. Mr. Diaz, tell us what happened. And in my heart, I knew what they were doing, and they were doing their job, yes, but they were also seeing if I would stick to my script. And this idea that I would intentionally hurt my son, who I so dearly loved, absolutely devastated me. So the next 2 months would put Ezra in the hospital with third-degree burns, multiple surgeries, and skin grafts, and he was recovering. But the reality is that he was not the only one suffering. You see, during those 2 months, I had severe bouts with depression and anxiety and anger, and I felt completely isolated and disconnected and alone. And if I'm honest with each and every one of you, I considered how life might be just a little bit better if I just wasn't around. You see, with my wife and my kid in the hospital, my house was empty, and honestly, I was too. You see, tragedy has a way of stripping us of our desire to be loved, and pain perpetuates this false narrative that we are insignificant and that we have no value. But when we are surrounded by community, everything changes. For me, it was my amazing wife and my spirit-filled pastor, and of course, my compassionate and present church. And they reached out to us, offering meals, praying for us, caring for us, in ways that allowed us to feel seen and heard, to feel loved again. And what I've come to realize is that when we are surrounded by people who love you, who don't mind stepping into your mess, and who show up and serve you, you can believe and begin to believe again that you are worth being loved again. And that community, my friends, transformed my life. And if I'm really candid, that community saved my life. You see, friends, God is in this upside down kingdom. He has called us, and he has seen it fit to redeem painful and tragic moments. And he is using us to help remind the world that this is the God we serve, and the Jesus we follow, and the Bible we believe in. This is the gospel that has turned our world upside down, and that reminds us that we are indeed his children. We bear his image. And that bids us to follow him and do the same. We are called as the beloved community of Christ to be both restorers of broken circumstances and affirmers of the image of God in every single one of his children. I know what you're probably wondering. How's Ezra doing today? Well, he's doing great. Ezra is strong and sweet and handsome as ever. And he is learning, as I did, that in this upside down kingdom, pain and hopelessness may visit us, but it doesn't consume us and it doesn't define us. As you might have imagined today, and we'll get the slides up here in a moment, today we're talking about Chosen Essentials, and we're talking about the sermon portion of Chosen. The portion of the sermon that you just heard has been seen and heard by thousands, but carefully crafted by dozens or so of my colleagues and pastor partners. It's a hard story to tell, but it's an essential part of the transformational experience that is Chosen. And if you would allow me, I would like to just maybe start with a couple of definitions. The first definition is, what exactly is a transformational experience? And do you want me to share my screen, Karina, or do you want to share yours with the slides? I don't, just want to make sure we're.
Yeah, I think James is pulling those up right now.
All right. Yeah, so there we go. Well, he does that. I just want to let you know, I'm just a little guy. I'm a rank and file senior church advisor. I am not a manager. And so I'm just speaking from experience and giving you the best practices that have been given to me, and hopefully they're very useful to you. But what is a transformational experience? There's a few scholars at the School of Psychological Services at the University of Northern Colorado who wrote a paper that identifies 3 key attributes of a transformational experience. They argue that a transformational experience refers to learning episodes in which students use ideas from the science classroom, again, this is a scholarly journal, to see and experience the world differently in their everyday lives. For our context, you might say that a transformational experience refers to a discipleship experience in which believers use ideas from their Sunday sermon or a Saturday group run to see and experience the world differently in their everyday lives. Perhaps another way to look at it is through our own World Vision U.S. Church and Ministry Partnerships perspective, where we say that a transformational experience costs you something. A transformational experience costs you something. Or the second one might be that it brings impact to the lives of those living in poverty. The third thing is it changes you in some kind of way. It can be done. The fourth one is it can be done in community or as an individual, but it's typically better as a community. The fifth is it's fun or emotional, which we all know Chosen is. And the sixth thing is, for us, it's leader endorsed, but usually lay-led. And so as we think about transformational experience, that's really what we're talking about. We're going to go on to slide 3. The second definition I want to underscore is what we mean by prescriptive. Okay, let's talk about prescriptive because Chosen is prescriptive. But the first definition is relating to the imposition or enforcement of a rule or method. All right, a rule enforcement method. Those are the key words there. And then 2, having become legally established or accepted by long usage or a passage of time. Now, friends, we've been doing this for a little bit. We've launched Chosen in physical environments, in virtual environments, in hybrid environments. And this method, this prescriptive method, has been proven over a long usage or passage of time. And so we believe that it works, and that's why we're sharing it with you today. Now, working prescriptively means that we're following those best practices that lead to higher yield and more impact. Before Chosen, our church team was seeing typical response rate through a Matthew 25 challenge as high as 5%. That was a very good Sunday. Today, we are seeing response rates of 20% and higher. We've seen response rates of up to 54%. Now, that's about a 500% growth in sponsorship acquisition as a result of Chosen. And it's absolutely turned our worlds upside down, as you can imagine. Now, at the end of the day, we're going to move on to the next slide. Our strategy means that we want to see more churches saying yes to transformational experiences like Chosen that result in more money raised and more children sponsored. That's as simple and as straightforward as it gets. That's what we're looking for. And if that's what we're called to do, then we have to invite pastors into these transformational experiences and shepherd them through a prescriptive method. All right. Now, Our heart and goal is to bring maximum impact to their people, and of course, to the children and communities we serve. Now, within this prescriptive method, we're going to go to the next slide, is there are several moments. And one of those moments that's built into Chosen that creates this level of impact is called follow the leader. Now, the challenge that we're facing in this current environment is how can we make a pastor a trusted guide to the congregant's chosen experience without going to the field, right? Chosen, these are things that we were previously able to do with pastors in a pre-COVID environment that are slightly more nuanced in a post-COVID environment. And so how do we create that key moment without taking them to the field? In following sessions, we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive into these, but I'm just trying to set the stage here for why it's so important to be prescriptive. The second key moment that we'll look at, there we go, is that fear of missing out, right? We're inviting people into a Sunday experience that in some way changes their worldview, but we tell them that they only have until a certain time to make a selection, and nobody wants to miss out. And so the challenge then becomes, how do we create that fear of missing out, that FOMO, in an environment that is digitally based? How do we do that in an environment where you may have people in the audience and people watching online? And last but not least, I'd like to talk just briefly about the third key moment, which is being the star of my own reveal. People love to see pictures of themselves. They may not always tell you that, but it is true. And in fact, studies have shown that you actually look at more of yourself on a Zoom conference than you look at others on your Zoom conference. We are, for better or worse, absorbed with ourselves. And so key moment number 3 is being the star of my own reveal. Now, again, we're going to go into more of that in future sessions, but today I want to talk about how each of those 3 key moments are also part of creating 3 pillars of the Chosen movement, which is the following slide. And those 3 pillars are really about celebration, community, and connection. Without those 3 elements within Chosen, it will not see the success that it has seen here at World Vision US. And so now we're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to move on to the next slide. And we're going to talk about a key moment of the sermon preparation. And part of that is the team teach. Some of us may call it getting the stage. Some of us may call it preaching. But when it comes to Chosen, the team teach is really the phrase that you may want to use as you talk to pastors about this. Now, what exactly is a team teach? Now, let's click one through. It involves us, World Vision US staff, delivering about a 15 to 18-minute sermon. Man, who's that handsome guy? Looks like Chitwood. Yeah. Now, the second piece of that is the pastor portion of it. It's about a 7-minute piece where he is doing an appeal and a vision casting for his church to activate around the third and final step, which is where I invite, or you will invite people to activate. It's about a 3-minute movement. So 28 minutes all the way in, 18-minute sermon max, including the video, about a 7-minute appeal, and a 3-minute call to action. This is a prescriptive method that we use and that we have seen be very influential in moving the needle to getting more children sponsored. Let's go a little bit deeper into what that first portion of the team teaches, and let's talk about the World Vision speaker, what his responsibilities are, and what some key components are of his sermon. The first thing that that person is going to do is, well, obviously they're going to talk for about 18 minutes, and they're going to share a part of their story. And so let's click through some of these so we can get started there and show them on the screen. And yep, there he is. The first portion of your story, which you just heard me tell a little bit of mine, is a personal story. That's very important. It's very important because it's your story. No one else can tell it. The second portion of the sermon is a reflection on Matthew 25. Why Matthew 25? Well, it closely aligns with another ministry program that we all know and love, and dovetails into a final call to action through Chosen. That's the first piece. The second piece is because we have found that it's the most directly correlated biblical passage that enforces the truth of the gospel that calls Jesus, those who have the least materially in the world, his brothers and sisters. And it brings us a step closer to identifying one of 2 critical themes that all of our sermons are built on, which we'll talk a little bit more later. The third is a sponsorship story. So for me, this is the story where I introduce Vincent, my sponsored child who lives in the community of Simbi, Rwanda. I talk about how we got connected as friends when I was traveling to Rwanda, and I tell about how sponsorship has helped turn that community's life around, and in that midst helped Vincent be a strong little boy when he was previously malnourished. And so that's a critical part of your sermon. The fourth and final piece is the Chosen on-ramp. Folks may already be familiar with Chosen, but they also need to understand how Chosen is different from what they've experienced previously through sponsorship, either through World Vision or with another organization. And so we like to cast a vision that allows them to have an on-ramp to the video, which is what allows them to have a little bit better idea of what they're being invited into. Now, the next portion is the pastor's portion. And there, again, it's about a 7-minute thing. And if we could, so it's got about 5 quick components that they hit really quickly. Again, we are coaching pastors through this. A child choosing them. What does it feel for what kind of vision do they have for the child that they'd like to choose them? Do they want it to be a boy or a girl? Are they hoping that they're chosen? Are they sharing thoughts and fears about maybe not being chosen? We all know that everybody gets chosen, but maybe they're sharing some of that. They're proclaiming their sponsorship goal. They're going to make a bold claim to their congregation that says, this is what we are shooting for. This is what we are going to do together as a community. The third thing that they're going to share is their excitement and anticipation for the reveal, that they're going to get to see children stepping into a school or maybe some other building or outside, to see the faces of their people on display for children to choose. They're going to share that with excitement. The fourth thing is we want to see Chosen align and integrate with that church's mission and vision. And so they're going to share about how Chosen fits into their church, how it fits into their vision, and why it's important for them to activate. And last but not least, they're going to share their excitement for that Reveal Sunday. They're going to say words like, I can't wait to see and celebrate with each one of you. And there are very good reasons for all of that to be included in there, primarily because people respond when their senior leader invites them, and people respond when they know that their senior leader is involved in seeing them participate. And so that's the pastor portion of this. We're going through it really quick, and I know that. The last portion of this is going to be back to us, the World Vision speaker. Well, we will come back up. We'll have some logistical steps for how to be chosen. We're going to invite people to get their cell phones out so that they can text in with their keyword and be prepared to take the next step to be chosen, going out to the lobby, having their selfie taken, etc. And that is the Team Teach. Now, a couple of things I want to tell you about that. Some of you may already be thinking, I won't get the stage. I won't be able to tell my story and be able to preach. And I want to tell you that it is possible. It is possible. You wouldn't believe this about me, but I thought I would be the last person to tell the story I just told you about a dozen times every year. Doesn't ever get any easier. And it's not something that I would always want to share. And hopefully I come up with a new story soon. But the reality is that I thought I'd be the last one to do this. And today I'm doing it roughly about a dozen times a year. And so if I can do it, you can do it. And if you think, well, Javi, you're just naturally gifted at speaking and maybe following a script. And to that, I will say part of that may be true, but I'll also tell you that it helps to put the work in. And it will take some effort for you to get to the point where you are comfortable with your talk, where you're comfortable walking a pastor through his portion, and where you're comfortable leading others to take a next step. The other thing that I'll tell you is that if for some reason your context does not allow you to be on stages, maybe there are denominational or liturgical rules that keep you off of that pulpit, that stage, you still need to know what those critical movements are so that you can empower and encourage the pastor, the priest of that church to move through their sermon. Now, what you'll find is that they likely will not have a sponsorship story. They'll likely not have a story that ties into this upside down kingdom or radical reversal theme. And so what you may find in the long run is that you may want to start offering yourself up for more of those preachings, because you're going to be spending a lot of time equipping pastors when you could be spending time just giving your talk more and more. So just a couple of things for your consideration.